Right. Well, I've got two or three after the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome. My name's Corey Forsyth, and this is Distributed Serverless Development Made Easy. We'll be talking today with myself and Brian from Vendia, as well as Prashanth from Antstack. So, before we get started, just a few logistics. We do want to keep this as conversational of a webinar as we possibly can. The audience for this webinar, it's you, it's developers, it's business folks, people that are working with software, cloud-based solutions, or have an interest in those things. As such, I want you to feel free to ask any questions. We've got the Q&A and the chat turned on for the webinar, so feel free to take a moment to recognize those controls in Zoom. And if you have questions, as soon as they pop up, we'll be glad to try to answer those. Some we may answer in text if it's easy enough to do so. Some we may hold off on to the very end of the presentation, and we'll have some time left over to try to address some of those questions. So again, feel free to use those. We are recording this webinar, so if you happen to need to step away or drop early, it will be made available via several YouTube channels from Vendia and Anstack here later. And without further ado, let's get started. Today we're going to cover a few things. Some welcome and introductions, of course. We're going to talk a little bit about Vendia, the company, and Share, the Vendia product that we'll be speaking about today. And we'll be speaking with Prashanth from Anstack and talking a little bit about the experience that Prashanth and his team have had using Vendia to build some really exciting serverless solutions. And then we're going to complete the session by talking about how to get engaged with Anstack and take advantage of their wonderful opportunities to develop some really cutting-edge solutions for your customers. And like I said, we'll leave the last little bit open for some Q&A. So without further ado, let's get to the introductions. Again, hello, my name is Corey Forsyth. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect here at Vendia, formerly AWS. I've been in the serverless and developer space for quite some time, but these days, Vendia is home, where I work with Brian and the greater Vendia team to help build solutions based on Vendia's Share and VDL services. And with that, allow me to introduce Brian McNamara. Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good morning, Corey. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Great.
Awesome. So really wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody for joining today. My name is Brian McNamara. Like Corey, I'm a Senior Solutions Architect here at Vendia. Prior to Vendia, I spent several years as a serverless specialist at Amazon Web Services, where I supported customers as they adopted services like Lambda, API Gateway, and step functions. I've spent most of my career focusing on automating cloud and on-premise infrastructure, and really enabling developers to do their thing, releasing code in a controlled manner. So looking forward to work with everyone here. And with that, I will tag in Prashanth.
Hello, everyone. I am Prashanth. I am CTO and co-founder of Anstack, which is a serverless-focused consulting and dev firm. Before Anstack, I've been an entrepreneur for almost a decade, and I come from the background of running the EC2 ELB stack on AWS and so on, and how with that I transitioned into serverless with Anstack. So that's kind of about me, and also I'm AWS serverless hero. That's about me. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again, Brian and Prashanth, for joining us today. Really excited for the conversation we'll have around serverless, Anstack, and Vendia. Some really cool topics. So let's dive in a little bit and set the stage for some of the conversation. So let me ask, this is a great question for you, Brian, being another solutions architect here at Vendia. Can you give the audience just a quick introduction? What is Vendia, with regard to the company, and, how do we speak to it with regard to the product?
Sure. So Vendia, the company, was actually founded last year by Dr. Tim Wagner and Shruti Rao. If you're not familiar with the name Tim Wagner, he's considered essentially the godfather of the serverless movement, previously serving as general manager of AWS's serverless business for several years before moving on to be the director of engineering at Coinbase. Coinbase is a large-scale cryptocurrency exchange. Now, while he was at Coinbase, Tim became aware of the pains of managing blockchain and ledger technologies at scale. Shruti was on the serverless business development team with Tim, before she actually left and started by managing Amazon's managed blockchain and distributed ledger category. Now, what they both found was that customers struggled to deploy permissioned ledger technologies that allowed for easy access and partner onboarding. As a result, many of the opportunities that they saw died on the vine. Now, out of this need, Vendia, the company, was born. Vendia Share is the first product that we've introduced, and it allows for multi-party data sharing in a controlled and ledgered manner without introducing operational overhead. So essentially, customers define what they want their data model to look like, and we, Vendia, take care of provisioning and managing the components needed to allow customers to share data with their partners. Vendia Share itself is built on serverless services, so we automatically gain the benefits that serverless affords, like no operational overhead, built-in scalability, built-in availability, and paying for business value. What this means is that our customers and their partners don't need to make costly and ongoing investments in infrastructure. Rather, they can focus on really sharing data. They can onboard additional partners to their network within minutes with very low friction. And I'll say stay tuned. We do have Vendia Share out as a developer preview, but we do also have some additional products in the pipeline as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian. And we'll start to unpack some of those things as we talk a little bit more about the experience that Prashanth and his team have had at Anstack using these technologies. So with that in mind, let's dive into a little bit of discussion around Vendia and its use in Anstack. So I'd like to present a few questions for Prashanth, and we'll kind of bounce around and follow up. Again, we want to keep this conversational. So as we have this dialogue, if you have any questions come to mind, feel free to take advantage of those chat and Q&A features in the app, and we'll be happy to get to those as we can. So to start us off, Prashanth, can you tell us a little bit about how you and Anstack are using Vendia Share to build customer outcomes?
I forgot I had to unmute. Yeah, so we have been working with Vendia from very early stage, and we have a couple of implementations which is ongoing. And one of those is Best Friends Animal Society. If for the people who don't know Best Friends, it's an NGO which is targeted at which is trying to save pets and find lost pets their homes back. And we are joining the mission here and trying to get more and more pets find their homes back. Uh, in this particular scenario, why today, most of the pets which are lost are not finding their home back is because the data is not uh, universal, and it's sitting in their own silos, because there are different organizations at operation, different shelters, and all of that. And the data is sitting in silos in each and every shelter. And I think about, I don't know the exact number, but 90+% of the pets which are lost today in United States never find their homes back. That's really high number. And we have this BFS has this motto called "Save them all," which we are using Vendia. We want to achieve that. So you may ask how Vendia is going to come into picture here. What happens in this scenario is, since all the data is sitting in silos, we are creating something called as a pet chain using the Vendia blockchain technology, in which all these different shelters are going to be able to share the data to the pet chain, and the data is going to get decentralized and distributed. Today, what is happening is, say you lost your pet and you go to a shelter nearby and you give the description, and they look up in their, whatever tools they are using today. It only does the lookup within that particular silo of the data which is related to that shelter. But there is a good chance your pet is probably found in some other organization or some other shelter, and that visibility is not available today. So with the pet chain, one should be able to, all the shelters will be connected to each other, and they will be able to perform these searches, which will allow them to, which will increase the probability of finding a matching pet a lot more compared to what it is today. So that is one of the use cases which we are building using Vendia Share.
That's awesome, Prashanth. Thank you. Yeah, I really like that use case. We talked in some of our other webinars about data silos being one of the leading reasons why solutions like Vendia Share exist, and the fact that sharing is just fundamentally difficult when you're talking about trying to get organizations not just to implement, but to agree on technologies. So, one of the things I think speaks to me the most about using it for this kind of a topology is that we can really reach and bring that visibility to different partners despite what technologies they might be using. So I know we'll unpack that a little bit more as we go.
Yeah.
Great. So another question, why not when building a solution like this just use a traditional database or perhaps a cloud-based NoSQL database?
Yeah, that's a very valid question, and I got asked this same question last week by somebody else as well. Why you are doing this implementation on blockchain? Why don't you just use AWS or GCP? Do it on DynamoDB AppSync kind of a setup. The answer is, those kind of solutions are really, go-to solutions when there is a single party involved and you are in full control of all the data you have. You can, create a schema whichever way you want, and you can build up. You have the complete freedom with respect to architectural choices or technological choices. But in case of best friends use case, uh, the participating organizations, there's going to be many other organizations which are going to participate in this data sharing. It's not just best friends animal society's its own data, right? There are other organizations which would want to contribute to the pet chain. So if we were to do this in a typical NoSQL, say DynamoDB, Lambda kind of a setup, what happens is, how do we run the infrastructure and who owns the data, right? Where if we make an AWS account for best friends and build this solution, then all other organizations will have to put their data into AWS account of the best friends animal society, and best friends animal society will have to take care of the costs of running this infrastructure and so on. And other organizations may have a problem with sharing, giving complete control over their data to somebody else. They don't know what's going on, and all that. And on top of it, how do you synchronize the data? How do you, if there is a pet record, for example, and say a dog gets a new vaccination, and now it is updated with this third-party organization, which needs to flow back to the main data lake per se, right? So all of this becomes a huge challenge in terms of how do you actually let multi-party participate in data sharing without sacrificing their ownership, without sacrificing security, and also no need, and also they can continue to be using their own different cloud setup, different tech choices, whatever it is, because there could be a possibility, org one is on AWS, or two is on Azure, or some other stack. And if we were to implement this, it becomes a lot more challenging for us.
Fantastic. Yeah, some of the call outs there certainly, the ability to do things like cross cloud, to implement with control without having to, basically mandate that partner organizations or even customers have to go learn a new tech stack. Is another thing I really like about the fact that we use things that are industry standard like GraphQL, for example.
Yeah, and I would say the one other thing that's really interesting to consider is that you know by managing the underlying data itself and providing access to the underlying resources, we're really letting both the underlying data ownership as well as the methods and techniques used to access that underlying data remain with the partners themselves. So Prashanth, looking, I'll say at the next question, what was the what's been your experience with developing on Vendia for you and your team? Was there a steep learning curve?
Yeah, so when I first heard about Vendia and when I first got to know its blockchain and ledger and all that, these are the things which I had absolutely no clue about. I don't know. Yeah, I have the basic idea of how Bitcoin works or Ethereum works and so on, but I will not go that far of saying I understand blockchain or I understand consensus or how all of that works. So when I first got to know about Vendia and blockchain, and when my co-founder Jivan said we will be working on this, I was little skeptical because I had no clue about it, and neither my team was. So, but to my surprise, when we started actually using Vendia for best friends, I realized all of that complexity under the hood is hidden away from developers. And all I get is a GraphQL endpoint with an API key, and I can just start using the underlying Vendia infrastructure. So all our team members already had working experience with GraphQL. They had used AWS AppSync, they had used Hasura. So it was just another GraphQL endpoint for us to start interacting with. So we did not have steep learning curve when we started off. We actually got started off really fast. I think only learning curve we had was schema design, how we are going to author the schema. But again, if you had done something on AppSync or something on GraphQL before, that's pretty much it's just very little time to understand the schema design of Vendia and schema format of Vendia and get going with it.
That's
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah, I'm reminded of my first couple of days here with the company, even because I had some of those same reservations. Walking into this what seems to be a complex ecosystem, and I remember asking our founder Tim, "Hey, is there an SDK? Like, how do I connect up and do like advanced things with this?" And he's like, "No, no, 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 no. It's GraphQL. Like, you just do everything and it works." And I can imagine people probably had the same response when he launched something like AWS Lambda, and suddenly you do compute with no processors, no underlying servers. So it is a bit of a paradigm shift, and I think that can create some of those reservations. But to your point, once you get in and play with it and realize how powerful it is to have that one interface, it really opens some interesting architectural doors.
Yep. The one piece that I would add to that is that with respect to Vendia, you don't necessarily have to rip and replace everything that you already have. So if you're already using underlying, underlying data stores, whether they're relational databases like Postgres or MySQL, or other cloud-based data stores like DynamoDB, you don't have to rip and replace and move everything over to Vendia Share. Certainly we would love it, but as an application owner and as a developer, you don't have to. In fact, Corey and I have been working really hard on providing some examples for creative ways that you can integrate Share with existing technologies. So I'm going to post that into our chat. Feel free. The repository that I'm sharing here just shows some representative examples to hopefully get you considering the different ways that Share can integrate with your existing tech stack.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that call out, Brian. I was going to ask you about that. And we'll make sure that we get that link into the description for those watching later on YouTube as well. Awesome. So we talked a little bit about the learning curve. Let me ask you, Prashanth, after getting under the covers and, experimenting and developing with Share, are there any things that you still wish that it could do, or are there other things that you were surprised it does do out of the box?
Yeah, like I said, we have been working with the platform from its alpha stages. So initial days, we had certain little nuances, when we were like, okay, we are used to doing certain things certain way, and there is a little bit of shift in those aspects, and we got the full idea and everything. Especially, I think we had a little bit of struggles with respect to how should we model our data for Vendia, and especially because there is a varied access pattern. In case of Best Friends Animal Society, this was a lot more challenging because there is just not one organization involved. There are like a lot of other organizations. So we had to come up with a schema which is self-explanatory, and all the participating organizations should be able to understand it easily. So some of the concepts, NoSQL concepts, which you generally use, like data duplication and all that, is a bit of a challenge here because there are some teams which are coming from traditional MySQL relational database backgrounds, and they may not understand what we are trying to achieve here. So it was a bit of a challenge. But with the recent introduction of indexes, I think it solved like hell lot of problems for us with respect to supporting a lot of new access patterns we were getting in Best Friends, and also on another project. So I think indexes was something which I was waiting for a very long time, and with that introduction of that, I think uh, all the things which I had in my wish list is checked per se. So I don't really have anything more to add to the platform at this point. I was only waiting for indexes so that it can support a lot many more access patterns.
That's good to hear. Yeah, glad that there's nothing too large on the wish list at this point. We're certainly a culture of builders here. A lot of us have the background of working directly with customers and deriving features from customer feedback. So those sentiments are tremendously important to us. And I like your comment about the access patterns, because this is something that was a little bit new to me. Engaging customers for the first time on this product versus things I'd done in my past, was that working with Share and really understanding the development process is all about looking at those access patterns. Whereas historically, like, I might be looking at an Oracle database or MySQL, and in the back of my mind, knowing I have to think about how my disks are going to be laid out in terms of bits. I have to know what the indexing technology does, what particular values might be highly computational. But here, we solve a lot of those problems through the management of the resources and by taking advantage of the underlying cloud technologies, and then presenting that with some, again, industry standard things like JSON schema and GraphQL. So it's a really interesting to not have to think as much about those things, and instead think about, how is the application going to be accessed? How are the customers going to interface with the data? So a little bit different of an experience.
So, Prashanth, if you could talk a bit more about your project team. So, the builders at Anstack that are working on Vendia-backed solutions. What do you see as being critical in successfully moving forward with Vendia?
We really did not have much of a, like I said, learning curve coming into India as a team, uh, because all of our folks are have already used GraphQL, different forms of GraphQL, uh, and we have been working on GraphQL React kind of stack from very long time. So when we started with Vendia, we really did not need any special requirement in terms of talent. All the devs could just get started with it very easily. I think little bit of know-how of cloud architecture and AWS is a plus, especially if you want to open up those advanced features of India, where you want to listen to the events, transaction results, and you want to use the files storage and all of that, where you connect the our S3 with Vendia, and all of those kind of advanced features. I think will probably require a little bit of the basic understanding of cloud, AWS, and stuff. Otherwise, it was very easy for us to get on with it. Apart from getting to learn the schema design and data modeling, which is pretty similar to the DynamoDB, if you ask me. Like I almost approach the schema design and data modeling from a DDB point of view, because the limitations are similar and the way you approach it is very similar. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And Prashanth, a follow-up question there. Share allows you to interact with a lot of cloud-native technologies. How was the experience with that? Did you end up, implementing other AWS services, for example, for your products? And how was the experience working with that as well as Share?
Yeah, we especially in best friends use case, there are certain use cases which was better done outside of the blockchain. For example, does not make sense to get into the blockchain. For example, in best friends email society, we had authentication, authorization, and whole bunch of RPAC, which was needed from management point of view for best friends to have admins, roles, and all of those kind of things. So we kind of complemented all those features outside of Vendia, and we used AWS App Sync and DynamoDB to enable those features. In another use case where similarly, we used AWS as a complementing solution to enable real-time chat and real-time discussions and so on, because uh, y- it's easier to build those things on the technology which is suited for those use cases than putting everything into the blockchain and then having those not so real-time delays coming out of this platform. So we used not just purely Vendia, we also used other technologies outside of Vendia to build a complete product.
Excellent, great. Yeah, I like that. You can certainly integrate and architect using the tools that make sense. I think a lot of it will make sense on chain because you do want some of those capabilities such as audit, visibility, and of course the sharing, being able to distribute that information in real time in an ordered fashion, but then also being able to take advantage of things like we support cognito authentication for the data plane, for example. So it's plug and play, a little bit of configuration, not too bad to learn. So you talked a little bit about the education aspect with respect to your team, and that you didn't really need to train or hire new talent. What was your experience on the business side of the project team working with the customer? Did you find that they had to get specific resources for the project to be successful? What was the relationship and the talent like on that side?
Uh, in both the cases, it's pretty much all the heavy lifting was done by us, and we were only listening to them from purely from the business requirements. They were just dictating what they would like to see on the screen and how they would like the functionality to be there and so on. And from the business point of view, they did not have to worry about anything apart from t- telling us what exactly they want to achieve. That's about it. There was no need for any kind of specialist coming from their end, or any kind of need to hire somebody who knows these things or something like that. So it was just give us what you want, and we let us figure out how we can do this.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that. Anytime I think that you can hit the ground running with the resources you have, you can certainly start to produce results a lot quicker because you don't have that strain of specifically hiring, but then again trying to train skills as you're trying to fight the calendar to complete something. So another great aspect of this pattern.
Yeah, so with that, I would say, Prashanth, what type of projects should others consider for Vendia Share? Like, if you look at comparing and contrasting existing data storage technologies versus Share, what helps to guide you for for when Share might be the right choice to use?
I think, like I said, the best friends is a good example where there is a multi-party data sharing involved, and they could be on different clouds, different stack, different. They could be using different technologies and so on. And out of the box, you can just use Vendia Share to share the data between two or three, four, five parties, and you can have full control on your data, and you can securely share it with others. So that's what real good use case which we have achieved with best friends. In another use case, it's mostly about ledger and tracking of assets, and keeping that immutable data in the blockchain. This can be applied to in many industries, right? Any industry which wants to track and trace what's happening at each step of the process, and figure out leakages, where exactly the leakage in numbers are happening. In terms of it could be supply chain, it could be telematics, it could be so many other use cases where you want to keep a tab on what's going on with the life cycle of a particular product, asset, any of that. So that is another really good use case. And third one being, oh, I forgot which one was the third one. Brian, would you like to fill me on that?
Sure. Well, I mean, I would just say there, like to add some additional points with respect to multi-party data sharing. Like, if you haven't worked in the space before where you need to share data with multiple parties, like it can be really tough. Even if you're working with really sophisticated IT partners, it can still be really, really tough. Like having to manage access, having to manage control, having to manage availability, scalability, all the things that you want in an enterprise API. The other thing to consider is that, like with Share, like I think it's really important to highlight that it's not just a one-way sharing of information. It's actually two ways. So different parties can add value back into into the sharing network. So if you are a a component in a supply chain, your partners can add information back in so that at a later point, when you do run your analytics processes, they're actually more enriched with your partner's information as well. So, like I think you know if you look at the core value offered by Share, multi-party data sharing with control, without operational overhead too. I think if you can check all of those boxes, I think Share is a great fit. The fact that we do have that ledgering technology that lets you see when changes were introduced, for some of our customers it may not be that important, but for others it may be absolutely critical. The fact that we give that out of the box without having to know any special programming languages, or if you look at other blockchain technologies like even Ethereum, like you don't have to write Solidity applications to make value of the information that we have on chain. You can just simply use that GraphQL endpoint and the programming language or the framework that you enjoy using.
Awesome points. Yeah, I like that, Brian. You said sharing is hard not just because of the technology decisions. I think that's very, very true. I know you put enough executives in a room and you ask them to share beyond the technology. Say you can agree to use something like Docker. What images do you use, for example, or what other attributes of the technology, or what's the data pattern. Those are the discussions that go on and on. So yeah, very, very critical to have a platform that gets the other stuff out of the way for you, so you can spend the time making those decisions. It's very good. All right, so let's say that I've recognized as an organization that I have these sharing problems, and I want to take advantage of a service like Vendia Share. How do I get involved, Prashanth? What services does Anstack offer, and how do customers get started working with Share and Anstack?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in my introduction, Anstack is fully focused on serverless, and that means we are partner with most of the serverless products out there, and we have been doing serverless for last 1.5 years, and we it's our unique proposition, and that's where we excel at. So far, I'm happy to say, like my co-founder Jivan mentions all the time, in 1.5 years of our journey, we have not spun up any EC2 instance or any kinds of instances per se. So that's a good thing, especially coming from those conventional backgrounds. Both of us having run those workloads, we consciously, only work on serverless. And at the same time, when we started Anstack, we wanted to make sure we become the single window for anybody who comes to us for all sorts of end-to-end product development. So we actually have a very nice, very good design team. If you have seen our website, you would know what kind of design team we have, right? So we go all the way from UX design till deployment, right? So we can do UX, UI development using React, Next.js, Vue.js, Svelte, and so on. Then we can build the backend and architect the backend on AWS, GCP, Azure, and platforms like Vendia Share. And then, we can deploy it using many different technologies again there, be it serverless framework, CDK, SAM, all of these. So we are kind of that end-to-end solution provider in terms of if somebody comes to us, we take care of all their needs from UX to deployment.
Excellent, yeah. And I would again highlight, the visuals that Anstack produces are one of my favorite parts of your team. Everything you guys produce is really visually stunning, from the website to the applications to the mobile solutions. So, it's very technically sound in that it's modern and it uses these really advanced, sophisticated cloud stacks, but then it's also visually pleasing, which is just an unbeatable combo in my opinion.
Thanks, Corey. I will pass that compliment to my design team.
Please do.
Mhm.
All right. So let's say you're wanting to get started with Vendia Share. Maybe not ready to pull the trigger entirely. Want to feel some things out. Let me pass this one to you, Brian. I've got some things on screen here about how to get involved with this. What are some good ways to get started and maybe kick off, a POC or a similar project?
Yeah, like I would say to the developers, if you're curious to experiment with the technology, we do offer a developer preview that's accessible at share.vendia.net. You can sign up, no obligation, no credit card needed. But I would say also consider the examples and the documentation that we have as well. The teams work pretty hard to create, I'd say, getting started guides that don't necessarily assume a whole lot about your experience developing APIs. So we present some really, really common examples for, like I'll say, that are representative of what we've seen customers do with Vendia Share. Javon mentioned, track and trace as an example. We do have that as a quick start, where you can spin up representative multi-party uni that essentially provides a golden path for interacting with the underlying data. But if you're really ready to move beyond that, please reach out to us. We've worked really hard to put together a proof of concept or proof of value framework where we can demonstrate real tangible value for customers that need to share data within a week. Without mentioning names, we've worked with a large automobile manufacturer, and we were able to get them up and running from essentially zero to a deployed data model within about half an hour using prior art. So we were able to take advantage of other data stores that we were using, but we can essentially guide that conversation. If you're in a position where your development team may not have either the experience or the resources needed to devote to developing an application on Share, where you want to share with your network of partners, but may not be able to, we can certainly put you in touch with Anstack as well. To echo Corey's sentiment, we have had such a wonderful experience with them as a partner. Their experience both in developing serverless technologies, web applications, mobile applications, and now Vendia Share will really help ensure that your experience is a very, very, very good one.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian. And I did see one question there on pricing for the pay-as-you-go developer accounts. I probably won't speak too much to pricing in this since we are going to record this and that may change in the future. But I will make sure that we do get those details made available and we'll put those in the comments. By and large, what I'll say our model has been that we tend to charge organizations a license fee per year and then a transaction fee, very much similar to the pay-as-you-go models in the cloud. So it still remains very economical. And then based on your needs, we'll have a conversation with you about the scale of your application, the types of transactions that you might be producing into that system, and then the nature of the partner network as well. All of those things might give us some room to make that a more economical solution for you. So again, we'll get those resources to you, but we encourage you, if you do have conversations, just to reach back out to us. And while you do, feel free to log in and play with the free developer preview, get acquainted with the technology, and reach out to us when you want to have those discussions. All right. With that, let's go ahead and transition to some Q&A. I don't see any open questions at this time. Brian, if you don't care to check, I know sometimes those don't come over too well for the host of the Zoom webinar, but we'll take a quick minute to look.
Yep. At this point, there are no open questions, but I would say to anyone, please don't be shy. So do we have a demo of the platform? Good question, Jerry. So the short answer is yes. Whether we want to go into a live demo right now, I don't know if we want to go there, but try to think if we have one that is accessible. Probably, you know what? We'll make this as a note. We can get a visual representation up. If you're looking to get started, really the best way is via our getting started guides. So I'll post that link into chat as well.
Yeah, I would echo the quick starts in the website are a great way to get started. And we do have some previously recorded webinars and our get starting videos on the YouTube channel. If you want to go watch an actual video-led demo, a great opportunity to do so. If you have a use case in mind and you want to see demo specific features as you're exploring the documentation, reach out to us because we'd love to get some feedback about not only your use cases, your customer needs, but what other products you've looked at. If you've been working with Share, how you're liking that. So yeah, Brian and I are here for those kinds of conversations, and we have the Anstack team to lean on for the deeper technical and the development conversations as well. So we'll be happy to entertain those.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add to that as well, we're really customer driven. So if there are things that are important to you as a developer, that are important to you as an organization, let us know. All of these data points help us to prioritize. We certainly have a vision of what we want to release, but we want to do, we think it makes the most sense to do so with respect to what our customers are asking for. So, as you're going through the developer preview, as you're going through quick start guides, and you're wondering, is this capability there yet? A, reach out, and B, let us know, how important it is to you and your projects that you're working on.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and if you do reach out and you want to have a deeper conversation, one of the scopes for those conversations tends to be the roadmap in general. So it's a great way to kind of, meet the rest of the team and get a little bit of a feel for what's coming down the road. We got some exciting things in the pipeline about to be released as we get closer and closer to GA. So we definitely would value the time to get the opportunity to show you some of those things. And again, Q&A is open as well as the chat. Oh, here's a question. What is the underlying architecture of Vendia? Oh, great question. Thanks, Dean. Brian, you want to take a first stab at that?
Yeah, so the short answer is we are built on serverless technologies. I'll say, given our pedigree, we are not super keen into spinning up servers ourselves. We believe that cloud service providers like AWS, like Azure, like GCP do a really good job of managing underlying infrastructure. So without getting into specifics, I'll say that we, at a high level, we do employ serverless services offered by these different cloud providers, and really it is a conscious decision. If you look at our history, and more specifically our founders' history, some of the challenges that they faced when working with blockchain and ledger technologies were tied to the scalability and availability and the management requirements for server-based or even container-based technology. So we've really sought to to move to a higher level of abstraction where we can use these massively scalable services for storing scalar data as well as file data while employing these APIs that can scale to really high levels of utilization.
Awesome. Yeah, the way I like to kind of tie a bow on that with customers is typically like you could probably imagine the technology we're using given the clouds we're in. And in some cases, if you look like the resources panel when you start up a Uni, which is part of the service, you'll see things like API gateway endpoints. So not too much secret sauce there. But under the covers, we've got some very sophisticated IP, not only around the sort of blockchain side of the world and distributed ledger, but then in the coordination with pushing those changes out to all parties in near real time. That's our secret sauce. So we have kind of that value add on top of what we consider to be world-class technology, serverless computing and architecture, and we combine the best of both worlds to make it happen.
Yeah.
So we have another question in the chat there too. I might pass this one over to Prashanth, if you don't mind. The question is, what's the latency of accessing data on Vendia? I know, from my point of view, I can say that we engineer it to be near real time, but Prashanth, what's been your experience there? Do you have a comment on that one?
Yeah, so it's been near real time, Jerry, and we pretty much not just for analytics use case. We are pretty much using this for powering a mobile progressive web app, and when somebody adds a pet or when they do perform any actions, it needs to reflect immediately, instantaneously. So it is pretty instantaneous, but I would not go that far to say as instantaneous as DynamoDB or something like that, because this is a blockchain and there is consensus and all of that happening. So, but it is near real time, and it has good read after write timing.
Yeah, and just to echo that and kind of unwrap some of those terms, it is based on a distributed ledger. So the information that any party puts in this network, because we are talking about a multi-party data plane, there is a consensus process that runs behind the scenes. Part of that means that each partner or the parts of the topology representing that partner do get a vote to say that yes, this proposed new data is good. We have the capability to validate it, and we are going to distribute it correctly. Some checks and balances, for lack of a better explanation. Those things take time, but not a lot. That's the magic of the software and the systems that support it. So, and it's one area where we're making a lot of continued investment to reduce that by multiple factors. So, as we put more and more development hours into the products and services, that gets closer and closer to real time.
Yeah, the one piece that I would add, even on top of that as well, is given how we can deploy these universal applications, we have the customers and partners have the ability to specify where these resources reside. So if you want to, you could actually have partners deploy their node or their component of this universal application through different regions around the world. So your time to actually apply the change may vary when compared to everyone running within a localized area geographically. But even there, if you consider that versus the read aspects as well. So if you deploy nodes near where your users are, their read latencies will be very low as well.
Excellent. Another couple of questions there in chat. Is the performance fast enough to run a chatbot on and to maintain things like session state, etc.? Definitely. So it's one of my favorite features that I don't get to implement too much, just because it's usually in the scope of this kind of feature set, is we support GraphQL subscriptions as part of our GraphQL API implementation. So when you bring your data model into the Vendia Share service, you can subscribe a GraphQL WebSocket client to do things in real time, like chat. So if you wanted to put the decisioning information on chain with regard to the answers to questions and things that you might have a chatbot do, you could then present the input from the chat, whatever your customer's putting in, and then use those subscription models to do some real-time interaction. You'd have to facilitate some plumbing of things that are going to handle a little bit of the compute side of that, of course, but that would be a very interesting conversation to have, and I don't know, I don't have any reservations, tackling that problem. Just taking a moment to look at the other questions and see we have a couple more pouring in there.
If the one piece that I would tack onto that, Corey, as well with subscriptions is that we do a good job of providing the subscription endpoint, but we don't do obviously you would need something maintaining that socket open on your end. Having said that, Prashanth mentioned that there are some more more advanced integrations. So one of the capabilities that we have is sending out notifications whenever changes are made to the underlying data. Now, obviously, this isn't that wouldn't be really good in the case of a WebSocket because the actual process of updating data is asynchronous in nature. But I would say depending on your use case, there are different ways of approaching the problem. If you need that immediate socket level WebSocket connection notification, we do provide that as Corey mentioned with subscriptions, GraphQL subscriptions. But if you can handle data in an asynchronous nature, we do have notifications as well for when underlying data is changed.
Awesome. And a great blockchain question came in here. Is there a possibility that the blockchain, the underlying ledger in our case, will become slower over time as more and more blocks are added? Will there be congestion? So wonderfully, no. So this is where a lot of the magic happens in the Vendia Share service is we say the blockchain word here and there, but we're not really fundamentally a blockchain. We take advantage of blockchain technology. And when we mix it in with that best value of the serverless components that we build across, we get a really interesting value addition. What happens is we get a blockchain that scales on the level of serverless, so near infinite. It's not one of these cases where you might have encountered things like, what comes to mind, Hyperledger, for example. I'll just pick on them for a moment, where it's more of a vertical scale when you implement with Hyperledger or some similar fabric. The more blocks you have, the more compute you need. If you have to replay the chain, oh, that's a lot of time and a lot of compute. Whereas we're backed by serverless technology. So despite the number of partners you have, the number of blocks you have, you're never going through a replay. You're never having to, reach a consensus to the point where you have to add more and more CPU power. It fundamentally just works. And the beauty behind the Vendia Share service is that you don't have to think about it being a blockchain. You take advantage of things like being able to do those immutable replays, being able to audit the changing of state or information that you add to chain or partners add to chain. And even though we use that add to chain verbiage, you're still just looking at it from the point of view of a database. Data's there. You have your consistent world state that is shared across all your partners. And when you need to go into the blockchain rabbit hole, you can, but you're not, bound by the traditional performance barriers that you might see with existing blockchain technology. All right. With that, I think we've just got a few more minutes left. So if you do have any additional questions, something comes into mind after we part today, please feel free, reach out. We've got a contact form on the share.vendia.net site or vendia.net if we're going in through the public site where the docs live. Feel free to post questions. Again, we do offer that 1-week POC. So if you have an idea and you want to flesh it out and you want to try the technology and talk about a full-fledged project, give us a few hours and a couple of days, a couple of resources, we can get that running with you. So we'll be happy to have those conversations as a good next step. And with that, I would just simply like to say thank you. Again, we'll post the resources as well as the video on our YouTube channels later, and we greatly appreciate your feedback, your time to pose some really interesting questions, and just being here today to entertain our conversation with Brian and Prashanth and I. So thank you again.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Have a great day.